Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and I'm talking to you again from the United States. It feels great to be back home again. I was, as you all know, in Brazil for the last a week and more than that. I gave two lectures there, one on grand strategy of the US and one on the grand strategy of the nations that belong to the BRICS grouping. But today I'm going to talk to you about a new magazine that has been launched in India. It's called India's World. And it is a fascinating initiative. I had not heard of it until I saw it posted on Happy Mon Jacob's social media, that is on X, when he announced about the magazine's launch. And clearly, it looks like a fascinating project. So I'm going to talk about it. Dr. Jaishankar inaugurated the launch of the magazine. He gave a speech about India's foreign policy and the key elements. I will basically make 7 or 8 points about the magazine, its importance, and what it potentially can do for India's foreign policy and India's image abroad, etc. And of course, on the scholarship on India's foreign policy. So first of all, I wanted to share with you a personal experience about this. But before I do that, please subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and do share this video with your social political network. So about 2 months ago, I wrote an article called On India's Grand Strategy. And I argued that while India claimed that it was pursuing strategic autonomy, I argued that India's foreign policy was at the moment trying to escape what I call as strategic vulnerabilities or strategic dependencies. It was published in the Frontline magazine. So when I wanted to publish this article, I didn't want to publish it in the US. I could have gone to, there are various US magazines. I write a lot for The Diplomat. I could have gone with them. But I wanted to publish that article in India to engage with Indian scholars on grand strategy and foreign policy. And when I started looking for places to publish, I found that while there were political magazines, there were also academic journals on international relations, but there was no magazine that addressed both academics and policymakers and practitioners at the same times. There was no magazine that could compete with, say, Foreign Affairs, Foreign Policy, The Diplomat, or the national interests that we have here in the US. So it was quite a disappointing search for me. I have several graduate students here from South Asia, and we all talked about it as to how come we didn't have any direct venue. Like, there was no outlet that I could immediately think of sending this article to. Whether they liked it or not, it's a different thing. They could have rejected it and said, oh, this is not a good article, or published it saying, oh, this is excellent. But there was no go-to place just 2 months ago. So I then looked at the possibilities. And so the magazines that were available were India Today, the Frontline magazine, Outlook India, the Caravan, and I think those are the 4 magazines that people suggested that I should look at. So I picked I picked Frontline magazine because I used to read that when I was in India, and I'd already published in Outlook India. So, but it is amazing. I'm so happy to see that India now has a magazine where world affairs and India's foreign policy can be discussed in a way that would interest India's policymakers and Indian students of international relations. Most of the magazines in the world are, even though they claim to cover the world, they are very Eurocentric or American-centric. So even though there is foreign affairs and foreign policy, there is a subtle bias, not in terms of how the articles are written, but particular in whose interests they're serving. So if you were to write an article that was, say, detrimental to US interests, no matter how good the article is, it probably would not be published in these journals. So there is a Eurocentric bias to most of the Western journals. They are Western journals after all. So it's good to have this magazine, India's World. I congratulate Happymon Jacob. I have read some of his work, even in Foreign Affairs, on launching of this magazine. I think it will become an important forum for discussion. I have already subscribed to the digital version, and it looks beautiful. It's done reasonably attractively, but we'll see. So I have a few observations to make about this magazine. And needless to say, I'm thrilled by the focus of at least the first issue, which is on grand strategy of India. As you all are aware, in the past couple of years, I have been focusing more and more on grand strategy, primarily of the United States, but also talking about India and China. In fact, this trip that I made to Brazil was about, I gave two lectures, one about the grand strategies of BRIC nations, Russia, India, China. Those are the three countries I spoke about, and also the grand strategy of the United States. I will be posting those videos this week, so you can watch all of that. So anyway, coming to this magazine, though clearly the leading article is by the leading thinker of Indian foreign policy at the moment, Dr. C. Raja Mohan. He wrote an article called Grand Strategy for a Viksit Bharat. And some of the ideas in this were also used by Dr. Jaishankar when he talked about the importance of Indian foreign policy. So let me share with you a few points that I want to make. First of all, this shows that the Indian strategic culture, there was a debate in the 1990s whether there was a strategic culture in India about India's foreign policy, or it was just made by the bureaucrats and implemented by them with some guidance from the ministers, etc. Was there a community which discussed foreign policy, community of scholars who are outside the government, who critique the government policy, who follow and study, they provide ideas as well as alternative visions for the government to pursue. So oftentimes bureaucrats who are busy implementing policy and doing the nuts and bolts of diplomacy may not actually have the opportunity to step back and think about foreign policy. So a magazine like this really raises the India's strategic culture to the next level. It is definitely a step up. And if the magazine survives, in the sense that if it catches on and it is published regularly and great contributions, I'm sure they worked very hard for the first issue, which has a lot of interesting essays. I will try to, in fact, invite some of the authors to Khanversations to talk about their essays in the near future, or as soon as I can, as soon as I finish grading this semester. In fact, most of the papers the grad students have been writing are around this idea of grand strategy. So I think, first of all, this is a great development in India's strategic culture. The second thing was it was inaugurated by the foreign minister. I have mixed feelings about it. So first of all, it gives the impression that this project is an extension of the Ministry of External Affairs. But I understand that in a country like India, it probably gives a lot of legitimacy to the project itself at home. So I think more universities will be willing to trust the magazine, subscribe to it. Perhaps the business world and the corporate sector will be more willing to basically fund it and provide donations. I don't know how the magazine is funded. In fact, it's not very clear who is the publisher of the magazine, at least from the website. Is it the Indian government, or is it the Jawaharlal Nehru University, or is it some think tank? But nevertheless, the fact that it was inaugurated by the External Affairs Minister gives it a lot of legitimacy and clearly should give it a boost in the beginning that such initiatives do need. So from that point of view, it is a positive thing that it was inaugurated by the foreign minister. But unless the strategic community enjoys strategic autonomy in thinking about foreign policy, it will not be an asset to the policymakers if the thinkers and contributors are not independent of the government. So if this is just an extension of the bureaucracy, then you should consider it as an internal newsletter of the Ministry of External Affairs. But if it does have editorial autonomy, then it's really an important endeavor. And so far, as I can see from the first set of contributors, that it is clearly attempting to be independent of the government. So that's an important point. The magazine is edited by Professor Happymon Jacob. And what I like about him is that he seeks to balance academia and policy. In fact, many years ago, as a doctoral student at Georgetown University, I had written an article called Policy Entrepreneurs, in which I had argued that there are basically three types of people in the policy community. One is the practitioners who are in the government who make policy and execute it. Then there are academics who study policy making, foreign policy. And then there are ideologues who I call policy entrepreneurs who are there pushing a particular ideological agenda in the foreign policy. And the key issue was really how to bridge the gap between academics and policymakers and how to recognize policy entrepreneurs and marginalize them. So anyway, so to me, it was very interesting to see that Dr. Happymon Jacob is also interested in bridging academia and policy. And I think he sees this magazine, India's World, as a vehicle that will just do that, bring the ideas from academia and from think tanks to the government. I think the ORF Foundation does a lot of that, but it also kind of looks as if it is also an extension of the Ministry of External Affairs occasionally. But I hope that the magazine does not become similar to ORF, which is too closely aligned with this particular dispensation in Delhi. But if you look at the first issue of the magazine, I'm assuming that all the articles which are on the website are also part of the digital, part of the print version of the first magazine. It shows that there is a huge diversity that Dr. Jacob has reached out to. But what it also reveals is that who are the stars of the Indian strategic community. So if you look at the website, obviously Dr. C. Raja Mohan is the first person to write about it. There's Barkha Dutt, who brings the journalistic perspective to this. I will talk about Shashi Tharoor, who also has an article and also on grant strategy in this. And then there are also contributions from Tanvi Madan, who is at the Brookings Institute. So you can see that there are American Indians also involved. So there might be other foreigners also here that I probably am not aware of. And so it's an interesting mix of scholars. So it tells you who are the insiders in India strategic community. And so that is a good thing. I would recommend, I'm going to post a link to the magazine in my description of this video. So do go and take a look at it, even if you don't want to pay for subscription. And I think that is the only weakness I found in this, that they are trying to, I mean, that a lot of the content is behind a paywall. And I think, I wish there are so many big corporations in India, you know, Ambani's and Adani's, someone comes forward and funds the whole magazine and makes all of it easily available to everybody, because I would like India's grad students and my grad students here in the US to be able to have access to all the articles in it without having to pay for it. And so reporters in India who cover foreign affairs and all the YouTube channels who discuss India's foreign policy now, all can have access to this particular project. So I think that is the only thing that I don't like about it, is that it's going to be behind paywall, but you can still get 4 articles free a month. It's kind of like the Diplomats model where you can get 5 articles free per month. So if you are a rich person, if you're a rich American Indian and you can afford to make India's World completely free, please go ahead and reach out to them and make a big donation or make a small endowment so that they can be able to do this for free. So that people from the global south and scholars of foreign policy can also benefit from this magazine, which I think is going to, if it continues to maintain this standard, is going to be a very important part of the global discussion on not just India's foreign policy, but also on world affairs. Dr. Shashi Tharoor also contributed an article which sort of provides it a bipartisan veneer to the endeavor, and it balances the inauguration by a sitting foreign minister. So there's somebody from the Bharatiya Janata Party who inaugurates it, but there is also an article by Dr. Shashi Tharoor, who is a member of the Indian National Congress, contributing it. So it tells you that this is not just advancing one particular perspective. even though you can see a prominent voice from the RSS, the ideologue of the Hindu nationalism, also I think endorsing the magazine. But that's all right. Even if he contributes, Ram Madhav, he has a point of view which is important in India. So just his endorsement, and even if he were to contribute articles, that's fine, as long as there are lots of other people also who are contributing to the article. To the magazine. So it was interesting to see that there is what you call a bipartisan kind of approach. So we'll see. I don't know whether there are far left Marxist thinkers on India's foreign policy who will be interested in contributing to the debate. It is very clear that there is going to be center left, center, and center right, and far right contributions to this magazine from the way it has been endorsed. And I also want to obviously talk about the main focus of the first issue, which is India's grand strategy. I just want to make a couple of observations about the lead article by Dr. Raja Mohan, who he does not provide a definition of grand strategy in this particular article. I know that there are books out there. In fact, I have a book, an edited volume, which he contributed to on India's grand strategy. So there's a more in-depth discussion of India's grand strategy. But here, Dr. Raja Mohan essentially presents India's grand strategy as becoming a developed nation by 2047, that is Viksit Bharat. And so basically he talks about how foreign policy can play a role in achieving a national goal. So that is the point that he's trying to make in that particular article. But so that's why it's also important, I think, to discuss what grand strategy is. After I have finished reading most of the articles, I will probably do another short video on what, in this particular issue, authors who have contributed to this particular issue, how they think about grand strategy. By the way, I did do a video called What is Grand Strategy? And it was embargoed for members only until December 17th. So I think tomorrow it will be disembargoed. And so you can see that video that I posted about a month and a half ago for members only, called What is Grand Strategy? So I try to explain to you what grand strategy is, at least how American foreign policy thinkers think about grand strategy. So anyway, it is interesting to see that Dr. Raja Mohan identifies India's grand goal as becoming a developed nation. And so basically he tries to link economic policy with foreign policy, and basically is trying to talk about the importance of strategic thinking in foreign policy, keeping in mind what economic goal really is. So that is basically what I wanted to talk about. Is I want to congratulate the Indian strategic community for now having an intellectual home. And there are a few things that are missing from the website, at least I couldn't find. One thing for people like me is, okay, so how do we submit articles to this magazine? How frequently will it be published? Will the web version be ongoing continuously, or is this going to be a quarterly magazine or a monthly magazine? And so articles will be published only when on the website, only when the journal is ready. I don't know those details. I'm sure they will be forthcoming sooner. They also review books, and the books that they have reviewed are interesting. One is called Prisoners of Geography. And of course, Raghuram Rajan and Rohit Lamba's Breaking the Mold. In fact, if you remember, I have promised to review this book myself. I haven't read it yet. I bought it about 2 months ago. It's fifth or sixth. There are 4 or 5 books ahead of it before I get to reading Raja Mohan's book. And Raghuram Rajan and Rohit Lamba's book. breaking the mold. And I'll probably try to see if I can invite him to come and talk about his book once I finish reading it. And then there is a book called The Kathmandu Chronicle, Reclaiming India-Nepal Relations. And of course, William Dalrymple's The Golden Road. The Golden Road, How Ancient India Transformed the World. And so that's another interesting book to read. And William is a really very interesting character. If you remember, I interviewed him about a year and a half ago when we talked about his book, The Anarchy, which was actually recommended very strongly here in the US by President Barack Obama. So anyway, so I'm very happy that a thing like India's world is now in existence. So congratulations to everybody. I'm sure a lot of people work behind the scenes to have launched this endeavor. And as someone who is focused on doing a lot of work on India's grand strategy and US grand strategy, so it'll be interesting to see what new ideas we can learn from this particular magazine. But no doubt, if they maintain the standard, they will soon become a competitor to foreign policy, foreign affairs, and the diplomat. So anyway, so I'm going to stop with that. Thank you for watching Khanversations. I am still a bit jet lagged. I just arrived. And as promised, I will post first my lecture on US Grand Strategy because my students also need to watch that. And then I'll post the other one about the BRICS subsequently. So thank you for watching. If you've liked the value addition that I do to your knowledge base, please subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. And take care. It's also time to start watching the last day of the test match in Brisbane. Oh my God, at least thank God for the last wicket that saved India from the ignominy of a follow-on. So anyway, all the best to the Indian cricket team and all the best to the team of India as well.